Hello, everyone. Anna here. Let me know who's here and if you guys can hear me all right. I've never done a YouTube live before. It's my first time, but it looks pretty straightforward on this end. I can see everybody's chats going on here. I see Melanie and Misty and Melanie and Liz. And Misty says you can hear me good. Awesome. Okay, I might actually try plugging in a microphone. See if that makes it even better. Real quick. Yeah, I usually have these going on Zoom twice a month as part of my subscription plan. So I offer twice monthly live interactive classes. They're fun because we can see each other and chat a little more, and you can see everyone's art at the end of it. And maybe some of our regulars are here tonight, but I'm sure there's a lot of new faces. So if you haven't met me before, my name is Anna, and I'll do a bigger introduction later. Okay. Always forget something. All right, how's the sound now? Okay, so yeah, we can hang out a couple of minutes and get set up while other friends are joining us. Um, so yeah, tonight we're going to be painting this little watercolor illustration of a witch, nice and spooky for Halloween. And it should be a nice, easy little illustration, just a good way to unwind for a little bit, do something fun and festive. And this is great for beginners, and if you're a little more experienced too, it's always good to learn something new, and just create for creativity's sake. Definitely. But yeah, if you are new to painting, I'll go over some basic techniques to dip your toes into it. But yeah, my name is Anna, and I'm a full-time artist based in Santa Cruz, California, working under my studio name, Follow the Sun Art. I have a lot of my own artwork. You can kind of see in the walls. It's a little dark back there, but a lot of it is ocean inspired, nature inspired. There's a lot of beautiful nature all around me, so I get lots of inspiration from my adventures to the beach, surfing, hiking, all kinds of good things. And yeah, I love just using bright colors, flowing lines, things like that. My favorite thing is making people feel happy and joyful through art. And I've been teaching classes for a couple of years too. I've been painting pretty much my whole life and professionally about 9 years, but teaching maybe 3 or 4 years now. But it's been a fun way to share the creative process, and I love seeing everyone's creativity in action. Even if you think you're not artistic at all, you definitely are. You have your own way of holding the brush and picking colors. So it's cool to see people tap into that. And yeah, feel free to leave a little comment in the chat and let us know where you're from and if you've painted before, if you've done watercolors before, and what you're going to dress up as for Halloween. I found a little super cozy deer costume at the thrift store. So that's what I'm going to be, a deer. All right. And then as for supplies, while you guys are typing, I'll go over that real quick too. I'm going to be demonstrating with watercolor. You can also do this with acrylic paint. You can do it with colored pencil. You can do it with crayons. You can do it with a pencil on the back of an envelope, whatever you've got available. Get creative. It's a pretty simple design that's really adaptable to any sort of medium. So just use whatever you have. If you're using watercolor like me, you want to have a sheet of watercolor paper. We don't need a lot of colors for this piece. There's a couple shades of blue, um, yellow. You can get away with the primary colors, and then, a dark color like black or gray for the witch silhouette. And I do have like some subtle accents of white for the stars. It's hard to paint white over watercolors, but you can do that, or you can make stars with a masking fluid. If you have something like that, you can mask off where you want the stars to be. And something to make a circle. You can try freehanding it, but sometimes they end up a little lopsided. But like a roll of tape, or a cup, or a bowl, or a good old fashioned compass is good too. And yeah, paint, brushes, water, anything else? Okay, let's see who we've got here. Lisa from New York City, new to painting and dressed in a steampunk costume. Fun. And Chris from Vallejo, California, new to watercolor. Cool. And Liz in Capitola. Oh, cool. You guys are just down the road. Awesome. Strawberries and skeleton. That's a fun combo. Nice. Nice to meet all you guys. All right. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started. It's been a couple of minutes. So I'm going to start by sketching out my scene. Turn this so you guys can see a little better. Okay, so I'm going to use my compass or whatever circle maker you're going with and put in the moon. And you want to leave a little bit of space on the top and the bottom just so we can kind of frame it with the sky. So I'll take this and find, roughly where the center is. Make sure it's kind of the same on every side. And then I'm just doing a light pencil sketch, enough so you can just see it. And yeah, if you go too dark, you'll end up seeing it with the watercolors. So usually what I'll do is I'll do a really light pencil sketch, so that way when I put my paint on, I won't see the pencil marks when I'm done. And if I do it too dark at first, I'll just skim over with my eraser to kind of erase it, just so I see like the faintest line ever. And then you don't have those pencil lines in your finished drawing. But we don't have a lot of lines in this piece, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. And then I'm going to grab a pencil and we're going to sketch in our witch, just so we have that outline down. You can also do it after you paint the moon, but if the page is wet, and sometimes it's hard to sketch over the paint, so it's nice to just kind of map everything out at first while we can. So I'll start off with her broomstick. You guys want to take a closer look. So we can start with the broomstick. Pretty easy. Just make a line and a little floof at the end. And she'll be kind of like towards the bottom here, a little down from center and to the right. But anywhere it ends up is fine. It doesn't have to be any one way. All of our paintings will be a little bit different, and that's just fine. Okay, so, and yes, I have this straight edge here. Yeah, if you have a straight edge you can use, that'll help make the line for the broom. And I've got her kind of sticking out of the moon a little bit. You can have her like a little bit smaller in the middle, or you can make her even bigger. It's totally up to you. There's ways to get creative with this composition. I'm just going to do the same thing I did before. Feel free to follow along. So then just kind of curve out for the broom part. Maybe you want to make your broom bristles all crazy or a little more neat. You can add your own style, add your own flair. Okay, and then somewhere in the middle of this broom, we'll make a little line going up for the witch's body. Let's see, you guys probably can't even see that sketch in my shadow. Turn down this light and see if that helps a little bit. Okay, so I'm starting to sketch in her body. Just got a little line there. And then I can kind of make a little rounded part for her shoulders. And her dress will kind of sweep back here and over the broom. And it's almost like a triangle shape. So I'll go forward a little where her knees will be. So at the bottom, it's like a triangle here, if that helps to simplify. Do a little quick close up so you guys can see that a little better. And then her arms kind of coming down here from the front. Make the face on the side. And out of there you can make a little nose, maybe a chin jutting out. Okay, I'll slow down a little for you guys to catch up. No worries. And let me know if there's anything, any specific part you guys want me to talk through again. I know these are kind of speeding through it probably is my problem. Um, but yeah, start with the broom and then we're just kind of sketching in the body. I'll hold that up close so you guys can kind of see the shape. It's really simple. Little triangle, flowy triangle for the body. Got a leg sticking out the bottom, an arm. You can kind of make a half circle for the face and then add the nose and the pointy chin. So two little points there. And then add a little hair and add a witch's hat. And then if you feel up for the challenge, you can add a little cat silhouette in the front too. So I'll go on and start sketching in the hat, kind of a line on the top of her head, and then floppy point and some hair. Yeah, and don't worry about making the sketch super perfect. It's just the silhouette, so it can be kind of sloppy at this stage. It's part of the process, so don't worry about that. And we'll clean it up once we get to the painting part. But yes, then I'll add a little leg, just kind of angling back towards the body. And you can give her a fancy little boot. And then to make the cat, I'll just do kind of like a little bump here. And then some ears and its face. There's the sketch up close. So yeah, just keep it super simple. Sorry, I apologize. It's a little hard to see. Always hard to see the sketch. But yeah, aim for like a general mapping out of where her head is, where the broom is, kind of where the body is, and then we can fill it in from there. Yeah, I'll go a little darker with my pencil if that helps you guys. I'll kind of go through the steps again the way I did. So straight line for the broom and add the broom bristles. Okay, and I made a line straight up to kind of get an idea, like a guideline of where my witch was going to be, kind of like right from the middle of the broom, a line going up, maybe like half the length of the broom, so not too big. Okay, and then you can make a little rounded part, like a half circle on top of that line for the shoulder, and that's gonna sweep back, kind of angling towards the back of the broom. And then you'll cross over that broom line where her dress is sitting. And then I'll go to the front and go straight down, parallel to that first line I made. And then angle down towards the broom. And that's going to be her arm. And then I'll add the bottom of the arm, a little space between her arm and her leg right there. And then on the bottom of the broom from the front here where I ended her leg, I'm going to angle back and down on both sides to make the bottom part of the leg and a nice witchy boot down there. Zoom in. And then kind of like midway between the very front and the midline of her upper body, I'm going to make a tiny line for the neck and then swoop out for the chin, make a point for the nose, and go back up, and that's the head. Then straight line on the top for the hat with the pointy part. You can make it flop back or you can just make it straight point. And then a little hair in the back. And then one more time for the cat. I'm just making kind of like a curved triangle here right at her knee. And then from the cat's back, I'm going to go straight up, make a pointy ear, and a little bit of a face there. Okay, keeping it super simple. Let me know how you guys are doing with that sketch. If there's anything else I can go over again to help you guys out. Try to keep it simple, but sometimes it gets a little complicated. Okay, I'll give you guys a minute to catch up and type anything in if you need to. And then we'll start painting right after that. All right. Okay, the hair and the cat. Yeah, the hair, it's not anything crazy. It's like a bunch of lines just coming back. We'll do that more with the paint, so that's why I did a pretty loose sketch of that. But if you want, you can make kind of like a zigzag line going back from the back of the hat down to meet like a little bit below the shoulders there. Or you can get creative too, guys. Like there's lots of ways you can take it. So you can make the hair crazy and wavy if you want. Yeah, and then the cat, one more time. So you can see the shape of the body of the cat. It's just like a rounded triangle, pretty small, just coming from the front of her knee right there. Okay. And then follow that line from the cat's back, just launch straight up into a point, go down, and then make a little bump for the face, meeting back. Okay, super simple. Yeah, and the hair, see, I just did like a kind of wavy line there, squiggle. All right, are we ready to paint? Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. If you guys are still refining your sketch, no worries, take your time. Remember that I'm gonna share the recording of this. It's gonna stay up on my channel after we're done. So if you will need to go back into any parts, you can always go back and rewatch it too. Okay. Um, so I'm gonna start with kind of like a big brush, and we can do the moon first. Okay. So in the moon, I've got kind of a range of colors. They're all really light. So I've got a little bit of yellow, a little bit of purple, a little bit of turquoise. That's kind of my combination for the moon. And so show you guys my palette. I'll grab a little bit of water on my brush, and then I'll pull off a little bit of yellow. And then I've got this mixing palette here, so I'll just kind of check my color, make sure it's nice and light. For watercolor, to get a lighter color, you want to just add more water and not really like smush the paint around too much. So I'm literally just kind of, just very lightly loading up my brush with some paint like so. And then I'll put it on my palette, and then I'll grab even a little more water and add it in, and then we can check that on our paper. And if it's too light, it's easy to add a little bit more pigment. If it's too dark, you can just clean your brush off and then just use water to kind of spread it around, and even mop it up with a paper towel or something. Okay, so I'll start filling in. Oh, this light is a little glaring, isn't it? Especially when I move around. Okay, so yeah, it's hard to see too because this color is so light, but it's a nice pale yellow. And we can even paint right over the witch. Don't worry about edging all around her because we'll just layer our silhouette right over top of that. And if you run out of your mixed color, just mix some more. Okay. So just kind of filling in the moon with a base coat of this yellow. And so ideally, I don't usually hold my watercolor paintings up vertically like this. It's much better if you can have them flat on the table, or else all of the water wants to kind of drip to the bottom, like my piece is doing here. Okay. But if you're doing acrylics or something different, then you can keep it flat like this. And then I'm going to do a technique called wet on wet. And Zaza, this is just yellow with water. So it's just yellow so far. Okay. I haven't added anything else yet. But yeah, now I'm going to do this technique called wet on wet, which basically means you're adding wet paint onto wet paper. So our moon should be nice and wet with that yellow paint. And now I'm going to pick another color, going with a little bit of turquoise here. So again, just barely dipping my brush into it, and then I'll kind of put it down here. That's a little might be okay. I was thinking it might be a little bit dark, but we'll try it out. And then for the wet on wet technique, you're just gonna kind of dab on like so. You can see my it's kind of dripping. If you have your painting flat, it should do a little bit better. See, I'll give mine a little tilt here. See if that helps. Okay, and usually with the wet on wet, I'll just kind of go in and dab it like crazy like this. Okay, and then the paint will just kind of do its own thing and work its magic. That's the beauty of watercolor is it's smart on its own. You don't need to do much. Just put it on the paper and let it be. You don't have to overwork it. Okay. So that was a little bit of turquoise, or you can use a blue or something. And then I like to add in a little bit of purple too. That's a complement to yellow. It's a complementary color, so it just helps create a little bit of contrast between the two colors. The moon's got all those interesting craters and everything. It's got a lot of texture, so it's one way I've found to capture all of that texture. So I've done the same thing. I just grabbed a tiny amount of paint, watered it down, mixed it up on my palette. You can't even see the color on my brush. That's how light it is. And then I'll do the same thing and just kind of dab that around in a pattern. Okay. Or not really a pattern, kind of like a random smattering of color. And then if you want to, if you feel like it's too light, you can always go back in and add a little bit more color before it dries out, ideally. So I'll go back into my yellow and then maybe just kind of brighten some of those areas up. Yeah, my moon's kind of drippy, but kind of like how that looks. It's pretty cool. So yeah, just adding some splashes of yellow throughout kind of randomly. And then see, I've got this crazy drip here, so I'm gonna mop that up. My rag, clean up my little puddle here. Okay, so you should find with that dabbing motion that your colors will kind of blend. Just be careful not to over blend them. You want to still kind of keep the colors separated. Um, and yeah, especially if your painting is flat, you can kind of work it a little bit easier. That technique's not working too well for me right now, the vertical orientation. Um, but yeah, that's the wet on wet technique. It's a good way to get like some lively textures. Okay, and I'll let you guys work on that. And we'll let this dry before we move on to the sky. But yeah, take your time coloring in the moon. Yeah, usually when I have my paintings flat on the table, I'll go really heavy with the water. If you feel like your paint, your pigment is not really flowing, if it's just kind of sitting where you put it, you can use more water and then it'll flow. Because if you see it, you can kind of check your painting in the light and see the shiny parts and the not shiny parts. Where it's shiny, it's still wet. Um, so if you see any parts that are drying out that aren't shiny, you can kind of go over them again with a little bit of water and then get that flow of the paint back. It's one of my favorite properties of watercolor, is that wet on wet technique, just because it's very minimal effort, but it's so elegant and lovely. Um, yeah, but yeah, usually I'll go kind of heavy with the water, like more than you think you need. It takes a little while to dry, of course, but you get really good flow of colors. And then I'll just kind of like load up my brush and add colors a lot. I'm just gonna poke around with my piece a little more while we do this. And Venetia, again, those colors were yellow, blue, and purple. Started with yellow, and then just add little dabs of the other two darker colors. All right, guys, I'm gonna start moving into the sky, but take your time working on the moon. No rush. Yeah, this design's super simple. So if you feel like you're behind, just relax, take your time. But yeah, we're gonna do the sky next. Just a combination of a couple shades of blue, or just one blue if that's all you have. And I like to have a starry sky, so there's a couple of ways to make the stars in the background I'll tell you about. So one is you can use a masking fluid if you have that on hand. And a masking fluid is kind of like this rubbery material. It's a fluid and it dries really quickly, but you can use a brush. Ideally, not like your nicest brush or anything, because sometimes it gets gunked up and ruins your brushes. But yeah, you can get a brush and just kind of dab it where you want it to go. Let it dry, paint over it, and it'll resist the paint. And then after you've painted the rest of the sky, the darker color over it, and it's dried, then you can kind of use an eraser or your finger to kind of scrape that masking fluid off, and it'll reveal the white of the page. Pretty fun stuff. And then another way is to layer over with white paint. So some of our watercolor palettes might have a little tub of white there. It's not the most opaque, like, it's really hard to get a bright white, back when you're watercoloring because it's kind of a little bit clear. But it works well enough. You can use the white watercolor to paint over it, or you can use acrylic paint that's usually a little bit more opaque. So you can layer with acrylic paint to make the stars, or a paint pen, or there's this there's this one kind of thing called Copic White. It's like an ink brand. But yeah, it's another opaque white ink that you can use over top to layer. And then another technique that I've never really done myself is scratching out, but sometimes artists will do that. They'll kind of like scratch out a very thin layer of the watercolor paper, and then you'll get the white underneath. So, few ways to make stars. I'll let you take your pick. Otherwise, we're gonna fill in the rest of the page with blue or purple or black. Okay, there's some options. And this time I will mix my paint a little more intensely. Okay, so I'll let you guys see it on my palette here. Got some water on my brush, and then let's see, I've got like a little map of my palette here to see what every pigment looks like. Which one do I want to use? The darkest blue, maybe ultramarine would be nice. Maybe Indanthrine blue. It's pretty nice. But yeah, use whatever blue looks good to you. There's so many to choose from. Okay, and I'll go with this Indanthrine. So I'm really gonna, grab a little water and really just kind of work my brush in there to activate that paint and get it nice and dark. So this time you really can see it on the end of my brush. It's pretty full of paint. Okay. And if it helps, you can kind of mix it up on a mixing part of your palette, or you can just dive straight in. That's what I'll do. Okay, so I'll just start filling it in. Ideally, you've got a larger brush for filling in this area. I wouldn't use a small brush to fill in the sky. That would take forever and it would be kind of uneven, but a larger brush will help you get a nice smooth finish and fill it in kind of quickly without the paint drying. And then I'll just kind of carefully go around the circle. If the moon is still wet, give it a few minutes to dry. If your colors touch, they're going to blend together. And then you'll kind of lose your moon because that edge will blur. One little thing that I like to do when I'm watercoloring, and I'm kind of impatient sometimes. You can see how fast I'm going. I apologize. But one thing I like to do is leave like a millimeter of white space between the shapes that I'm painting, and that way the colors don't touch, and you can kind of maintain your independent shapes. So if you feel like you've got that control over your brush, you can go for the millimeter of space between your moon if it's still wet, of course. And what else was I going to say? Yes, otherwise, you can just wait a couple minutes for the moon to dry before proceeding to the sky. Okay, so start at the top, just working my way down and around. And you can also use the wet on wet technique on the sky for some cool effects. Maybe try out some different combinations of blues, or you can add in some black, especially on the corners to get even more contrast. Okay, but I'm just going to start with working my way around here with the blue. Just that one blue. And carefully, carefully go around the moon here. Getting a little more water on my brush and activating more paint as I go, because you'll need quite a bit to fill in this large area. But if you feel like your paint's getting a little choppy, like here, you can see all the different brush strokes. You can go with that. So I've got them going in different directions, but maybe I'll pick up some more paint and do these long circular brush strokes. See, I'm using my whole arm in these brush strokes to really sweep them around. Very carefree. Okay. But yeah, just remember with watercolor, it's kind of a tricky balance too. If you feel like you're happy with what you've got, you can stop. Don't do any more. Because it's very easy to overwork your paintings too. So if you feel like you got a nice smooth finish on your first go and you love the way it looks, you can just let it be. You don't have to go crazy with these brush strokes. And again, just going really carefully around the moon so I don't get any of that dark blue in there. And then maybe I'll grab a little bit of my turquoise and see how that looks. Maybe add a couple of those big lines around, just going in a circle around the moon, kind of random spacing. I think that's a nice touch. It's a little different from my sample, but that's the way it goes sometimes with these things. I always try new things, try out new things as I go. And let's see, maybe I'll grab a little bit of black and just add it in the corners there for a little contrast. Yeah, don't be afraid to go heavy with your pigment. The other thing about watercolor is it dries lighter than when you put it down. So if you feel like your sky is too faint, you can let it dry and then go over with another layer. Or if it's still wet, you can just plop on more pigment to intensify it. Just to, like really smush your paint around to activate a bunch of it. Um, yeah, because it does dry a little bit lighter, and then it's nice to have that contrast with really rich colors. At least I personally think so because I'm a fan of bold lines and bright colors. It adds a lot of liveliness. Okay, cool. I think that's looking pretty cool. Hope you guys are all enjoying the process so far. Okay. Now think I'll stop touching it, let the paint do its thing and dry out. Another thing I like to be careful about is uneven drying. Um, so if parts of the part you just painted start drying out, but you're still painting it, then you might like lift up some of the paint and just get like a lot of unevenness. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind as you go along. If Usually I'll just paint in the section, let it dry completely, and then maybe I'll layer over it again if I want to add more, especially if it's a large area. That's a little better. Um, but yeah, just kind of assess it as you go along. If you feel like something's going wrong, just take a break and then let it dry and then do another layer over it. Okay, Zaza, you asked if I'm using a different color. I used two shades of blue, a dark blue and kind of a turquoisey blue to make those circular lines, and then a little bit of black in the corners just to up the contrast. Okay, and I'll go ahead and give you guys a few minutes to work on your sky and anything else you're working on, and let our paintings dry out a little bit. And the last step is going to be to add the little silhouette of the witch, fill it in. And then the step after that is if you want to add some stars, you can do that afterwards too, if you have the tools. But you can leave it just like this too. I think it looks cool just like that also. Yeah, in the meantime, I guess I'll tell you guys about my app, Creative Hour, if you haven't already checked it out. It's available on the Apple Store and on Google Play. And I just built it over the summer, so it's pretty new. But I've been doing my live online classes since 2020, when everybody else started doing everything online. But I'm still going with it because we've got a nice little community, and I think it's just such a great way to get a little dose of creativity whenever you want. I have live sessions every or 2 Fridays a month, Friday evenings, 5 p.m. Live on Zoom, so you can go meet other um, budding artists and paint along kind of in a similar fashion. I alternate between acrylic and watercolor painting lessons. And I also started incorporating a new inspired by series, which I'm really excited about, where I pick a famous artist and we learn a little bit about their life and make something inspired by them. So we already did Ernst Haeckel, a science illustrator, and Leonardo da Vinci, one of my personal favorites. And our next class on November 11th is going to be inspired by Gustav Klimt. If you're not familiar, he's the artist that does figures with like gold and kind of like that spotty pattern. Pretty cool. So we'll do a piece inspired by his Tree of Life painting, and then an autumn leaf watercolor for the following November session. But yeah, we do those twice a month live on Zoom, and then I record all the sessions, and you can watch like I don't know, 50 or 60 recorded classes I've got on there already, and the collection's always growing. All different subject matter and acrylic and watercolor, some gouache painting as well. I've also got some basic techniques in the app, and it's just 14.99 a month to access all of that. There's a built-in community feature where you can see what other people are making and share your own art, track your creativity if you're trying to do more of that, carve out more time for art. You can kind of track your progress and almost fill in like these journal entries, see your progress as you go along over time, see your improvement and your skills. And then I also have an extra course on there, an additional one called the Kickstart Your Art Challenge. So that's a 6-week challenge where every week we cover a different topic. to get you creating your own art without an instructor, find your voice, stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. It's called Creative Hour. You can search for it. It's also, if you're not into tech, you can also just type it in creativehour.passion.io and find it that way. Let me know if you guys have any questions about it. Okay, so how's everyone doing? You guys making some progress? You guys good with your skies, your moons? Let me know how it's going. Yeah, so like I said, our last step is going to be to fill in our little silhouette of the witch. So I'm going to go ahead and start that now. And again, if you guys are working on any other parts, just take your time, no rush. Um, you can meet me wherever you're at. But anyway, I'm going to switch to a smaller brush now. So I love this. This is my favorite brush I use like for an entire painting sometimes, a size 6 round brush. This brand is Raphael. There's a lot of brushes out there. But yeah, I love it because it's got like a nice thick belly so it can hold a lot of paint, but it also comes to this really fine point so I can make really thin lines with it and I can fill in big areas too. So it's really versatile. I really love these kinds of brushes. But I also have some smaller detail brushes that I'll use sometimes. So those are good maybe for like the witch's broom or her shoe or the cat's ears, really tiny details like that. You can also use a small brush. But yeah, just see what you have and use what works. And Venetia, I see you're asking me to slow down. Sorry, I'm gonna go ahead and carry on. But like I said, if you're still working on other parts, don't feel rushed. You can carry on at your own pace, and then the recording will stay up. So if you want to jump back to any parts and rewatch anything that you feel like you missed or that I sped through too fast, you can go back into it and finish up. But yes, to keep the class going, I'm gonna go ahead and start filling in the witch, which is quite simple. Just gonna grab some black paint again. Just really, where's my black? There it is. Really kind of smushing in the paint, smushing it around to activate a bunch of it. See, my brush is pretty dark there. And then with a really light touch, um, you can you can change the thickness of your line with the pressure you apply with the brush. So if you want a really thin line, like for the broomstick, for example, I'll kind of steady my hand so I don't go wobbly. Sometimes I'll stick a pinky out. And then just very light pressure. Nice and slow. Start with that broomstick. Grab some more paint. And then make a bunch of lines like this. Kind of starting from the broom handle and going out to the back. Sorry, a little hard to see. Like so, just a little flick there. Maybe we'll go a little crazy with our broom, like so. Okay, get a little more water and paint as we go along, as needed. And yeah, there's no specific order on the best way to fill in the silhouette, so just kind of go along whichever way works for you. Left to right, right to left, top to bottom. But we'll just kind of fill in our sketch that we sketched in. And I made my black as dark as I could get it, so we have a nice, strong silhouette. If you mess up with any lines, there are ways to recover your painting, although it's hard to get the white of the page back sometimes. But if you like accidentally went crazy and made a line somewhere you didn't want it, you can grab your little towel and just try to dab it up. You can put a little water on it and mop it up too. Could also use your brush to kind of, scrub it out, give it a little cleanse, and that will fix your mistakes if you make them. And then we'll carry on, continue filling in our little witch here, nice and carefully. And then don't forget to add your signature with paint or pencil. All right, and that's pretty much it. I'll hang out for a couple more minutes. If you guys have any questions or want to let me know how it's going, I would really love to see your paintings when you're finished. So there's a couple of ways to share, either on that Creative Hour app where you can make a free account and there's a section to share your art. I also have a Facebook group. It's called Follow the Sun Art Club. I'll post a couple links here for you guys if you want to check that out in the chat section here. And or you can just email me. Yeah, I love to see your art. Instagram too. Wherever you go to share your stuff. And yeah, love to see them. And yeah, let me know if you've had any trouble with any of the steps. I can go over them again if you guys wish. And again, the recording will stay up here if you ever want to rewatch it, or share it with anyone too. Let's see here. Okay, here's the link to our Facebook group. And then Creative Hour app, which again you can also find on the Apple Store, Apple App Store, and Google Play. And there's tons more content in there. If you want to dive into painting and learn through some fun projects, yeah, it's a good way to get your artistic fix and learn and practice. But yeah, thank you all for tuning in tonight, and I hope you all have a very happy Halloween, however you're celebrating. Melanie, thank you. Glad you enjoyed the class. Yeah, let's see. I'll probably come back with a free one every once in a while here on YouTube Live too. So stay tuned. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram. Sign up for my email list for updates. But yeah, enjoy the evening. Thank you all. And don't forget to share your paintings because I really want to see them.